Have you ever noticed that many people undermine their own authority before they even open their mouths? It's not a lack of intelligence, it's not shyness, it's ignorance of the hidden rules of the social game. And here's the first controversy. There is no freedom to be as you are in public. There is the ruthless reading of human nature, which Machiavelli anticipated centuries ago. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that every gesture, every nervous laugh, every unnecessary excuse functions as a sign of weakness. And in this game, the strong do not forgive. While you believe that being transparent and accessible is enough, others employ strategic silence, calculated use of force, and the appearance of virtue to build their own loyal armies. The end justifies the means, and these means go unnoticed by those who don't see the subtleties. Better to be feared than loved isn't just an old aphorism. It's a compass for survival in any competitive environment, from work to social media. The counterintuitive thing is that the most fatal mistakes aren't found in major flaws, but in small details. A nervous laugh, an over-explanation, a nasty bit of gossip. These are micro gestures you don't even notice, but they betray insecurity and attract social predators. Today, you'll discover the 9 public mistakes you should never make, and more importantly, how to transform your presence into an invisible weapon that silently commands respect. The micro excuses that diminish you before you speak. Have you ever noticed how, before even opening their mouths, some people start sabotaging themselves with those subtle micro excuses? It's the famous, "I'm sorry if I'm wrong, I don't think it's important," or even the classic, "maybe what I'm about to say is stupid." These seemingly innocent little phrases are actually signs of weakness that undermine the perception of authority. A leader, or even an ordinary person who wants to be heard, needs to understand that the world isn't driven by ideals of pure justice, but by a politics guided by reality. And in this reality, every detail of posture counts. Machiavelli already warned, those who show hesitation give ammunition to the enemy. Those who diminish themselves before speaking open the door for others to treat them as less capable. The end justifies the means when the goal is to preserve one's own credibility. And in this game, even the choice of words is a calculated use of force, invisible but real. The most curious thing? Generally, those who apologize in advance haven't even made a mistake yet. Imagine someone in a crucial meeting. The boss asks for a new idea, and the employee raises his voice to say, "Look, what I'm about to say might be silly, but..." There you go. He's already publicly castrated himself. He may even have a brilliant idea, but the initial framing ruins his chance of being taken seriously. It's like entering a gladiator's arena already on his knees. Machiavelli would say it's better to be feared than loved in this kind of scenario. Not in the sense of spreading literal fear, but of conveying firmness, even if only through the appearance of virtue. No one follows someone who shows insecurity at the first sign. To correct this, a simple practice is enough. Before speaking, replace excuses with pauses of presence. Breathe, look someone in the eye, and state your position directly, without conditionals. A practical example. Instead of "I think it could work," say, "This is a possible and strategic solution." A small change in words, a big impact on how you're perceived. These micro-apologies reveal something deeper, an unconscious belief that it's safer to protect oneself with excessive humility than to risk rejection. But therein lies the paradox. In an attempt to avoid being hated, one ends up being ignored, which in power politics is almost worse than being hated. The real game isn't about appearing likable, but about being perceived as someone worthy of being heard. Virtue and fortune go hand in hand, but virtue requires the courage to put oneself at the center without asking permission. Constant adaptability doesn't mean changing your essence, but adjusting how you position yourself. Want a practical exercise? For a week, write down every time you apologize before speaking. At the end, reflect. How many of those apologies were actually necessary? This kind of self-awareness is key to breaking the habit. And if micro-apologies are the first silent mistake, the next is even more insidious. That nervous laugh that betrays fear and calls out social predators. The nervous laughter that betrays fear and attracts social predators. Few people realize it, but nervous laughter is like a beacon lit in the middle of the night, warning everyone. There is fear here. It's that awkward smile, given at the wrong time, almost apologizing for its existence. In reality-driven politics, this gesture is an invitation for social predators to advance. Machiavelli would explain bluntly, in arenas of power, signs of weakness are more dangerous than a miscalculation. When you laugh nervously, you don't convey sympathy, you convey submission. The end justifies the means. And in this case, the means is firm silence, which commands respect. It's not about becoming an emotionless statue, but about using the calculated use of force in one's facial expression. What many forget is that even the absence of laughter can be a weapon, as long as it doesn't turn into overt arrogance. Between better to be feared than loved and avoid being hated, the balance lies in laughing consciously, not reflexively. Imagine a poker player. He holds average cards, but when someone makes a high bet, he lets out that wry chuckle, trying to disguise the tension. There you go. He's already given the game away. The same dynamic occurs at work, in a job interview, or even in social gatherings. Nervous laughter betrays emotional fragility, like someone opening a safe in front of strangers. And this is where virtue and fortune come in. Luck may mask one situation or another, but it's virtue, the ability to control oneself, that guarantees victory in the long run. A practical way to practice? Record yourself speaking in simulated pressure situations. When you notice when nervous laughter arises, you begin to become aware of it. Replace laughter with silence or a firm response. It's uncomfortable at first, but with repetition, it becomes natural. After all, decisions based on real human nature show those who control the subtle signals control how others read them. The curious detail is that nervous laughter not only betrays fear, but also invites the other person to dominate the space. It's like saying, "I'm not a threat, go ahead." And in a world where loyal armies are built on trust and firmness, this gesture undermines any leadership. Social predators love these signals because they know they can manipulate and gain advantage. Constant adaptability means learning to laugh with intention rather than laughing to protect yourself. Want a practical exercise? Go into a social conversation and when you feel the automatic urge to laugh, pause for 2 seconds, look intently, and only then smile if you truly mean it. This simple act changes the power dynamic. Because if nervous laughter betrays fear, over-explaining, the next silent mistake, declares a desperate search for approval, and this opens even more room for losing authority. The excessive explanation that betrays the search for approval. Those who explain too much end up, without realizing it, placing themselves as defendants in an invisible court. It's as if every word were an attempt to justify their own existence. Reality-driven politics shows that in powerful environments, those who talk too much reveal a desire for acceptance. Machiavelli made it clear, it's not eloquence that guarantees respect, but firmness in what one says. When someone gets lost in long justifications, they're actually saying, "Please accept me." The end justifies the means. And in this case, the means is objectivity, short, direct, and incisive. It's better to be feared than loved in this regard, because over-explanation opens the door to being devalued. The appearance of virtue, when forced by endless justifications, becomes explicit fragility. And ironically, the more you strive to convince, the more others realize you don't trust yourself. A classic example is the insecure salesperson. The customer asks the price, and instead of responding firmly, they launch into a 10-minute tirade. They talk about production costs, logistical difficulties, and the quality of the materials, as if needing to justify charging so much. The result? The customer smells weakness. Virtue and fortune require the opposite, clarity and economy of words. A leader who says, "This is the price," conveys power, even if they later offer strategic negotiations. Those who over-explain are like those who reveal strategies in public. They reveal cards that didn't need to be shown. A practical exercise is to practice responding in a single sentence. Example, instead of, "I was only late because the traffic was terrible, and it rained, and my car almost didn't start," simply say, "I was late, thanks for waiting." Simple, firm, and without leaving room for unnecessary judgment. Over-explaining betrays a vice of seeking approval at any cost. It's the instinct to avoid being hated, but it ends up having the opposite effect. It tires, wears you down, and weakens you. Decisions based on real human nature show that people respect those who speak little and confidently more than those who speak a lot and apologize between the lines. Loyal armies of their own form around leaders who inspire confidence with short sentences, not with speeches begging for validation. Constant adaptability here means learning to cut out unnecessary words and trust the weight of silence. A powerful exercise is to record a conversation of your own and then cut out 50% of the explanations. You'll notice the impact increases. In the end, those who explain too much invite judgment. Those who speak only what's necessary let others reflect. And if over-explaining betrays your insecurity, public gossip, the next mistake, reveals something even more serious, your lack of loyalty. Public gossip that leaks loyalty and kills authority. Few mistakes erode authority as much as public gossip. When someone opens their mouth to talk about someone else's life, they don't realize they're revealing more about themselves than about the other person. In a reality-driven politics, gossiping is like exposing a crack in one's own wall. Machiavelli once said that governing requires loyal armies, and loyalty is proven precisely through strategic silence. Those who gossip demonstrate an inability to keep secrets and therefore become untrustworthy. The end justifies the means when the priority is preserving one's own image of trustworthiness. Better to be feared than loved in this regard, for those who inspire fear through firmness attract respect. Those who try to be loved with cheap gossip attract distrust. The appearance of virtue in these cases crumbles in seconds. It's as if every word spoken against another were a shot fired in one's own foot. Consider a simple example. An employee publicly comments that his boss doesn't understand anything about new technologies. It may seem like a mere rant, but the question arises in the mind of the listener. If he says this about his boss, what will he say about me when he's not around? Virtue and fortune do not smile on those who open their mouths against their allies. In social games, gossip is interpreted as silent betrayal. Decisions based on true human nature demonstrate that trust is a more valuable asset than any position. A practical exercise to curb this addiction is simple. When you feel the urge to gossip, pause and ask yourself, what do I gain by saying this? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be nothing. Silence in this moment is the true calculated use of force. And ironically, this silence, rather than diminishing, strengthens one's authority in the eyes of others. Gossiping is also a way of taking the invisible bait. When someone provokes you with sensitive information and you respond by spreading comments, you've entered the other person's frame. Avoiding hatred isn't achieved by seeking cheap alliances through gossip, but rather by building your own loyal armies based on trust. Constant adaptability means learning to hold your tongue, even when everything inside you is telling you to vent. Want some immediate practice? Transform every impulse to gossip into creative energy. Instead of talking about someone else's flaw, write down an idea, develop a plan, or simply remain silent with an enigmatic smile. This creates an aura of mystery that, in itself, increases respect. But if public gossip leaks your loyalty, the next mistake is even more dangerous, taking the bait and falling into open provocations which turn you into a pawn on someone else's stage. Taking the bait, responding to provocations, and entering the other person's frame. Responding to provocations is like accepting a fight on enemy territory. With each impulsive response, you abandon your strategy to pursue the other's agenda. In reality-driven politics, this is one of the biggest mistakes, letting someone else determine the pace and the battlefield. Machiavelli already pointed out that the end justifies the means, and in this case, the means is learning not to react when provoked. It's better to be feared than loved, and part of this fear stems from calculated silence, which confuses those expecting an explosion. By taking the bait, you show that you have no control over yourself, and those who don't control themselves control nothing. The calculated use of force begins with emotional control. The appearance of virtue is maintained precisely when you refuse to play dirty and stay focused on what really matters. Reacting may seem like a momentary victory, but it is a strategic defeat. Imagine a meeting where someone makes a scathing joke against you. The natural impulse is to retort, to prove you're not weak. But this impulse is precisely the trap. By responding, you reinforce the frame created by the other person, that you're under attack. Virtue and fortune favor those who don't allow themselves to be drawn into cheap provocations. A practical exercise is to practice neutral responses, or better yet, silence accompanied by a firm gaze. It's amazing how a simple, restrained smile can disarm a provocateur. Decisions based on real human nature show that provocateurs only exist because they find an audience. Without an audience, they disappear. Training yourself not to take the bait is like building your own loyal armies. It strengthens your position as a leader because it makes it clear that you don't sell yourself to others' games. This skill isn't acquired overnight, but it transforms others' perception of you. Taking the bait also reveals something profound, a lack of status that seeks immediate recognition. By reacting, you scream, "Notice me!" That's why avoiding being hated shouldn't be confused with trying to please at any cost, because the reaction is often just that, a cry for attention. Constant adaptability means learning to choose your battles. It's not cowardice, it's strategy. Want a practical exercise? Before responding to any provocation, breathe and ask, does this reaction strengthen or weaken my authority? If it weakens, remain silent. If it strengthens, speak firmly, without haste. In the long run, authority is built by what you choose to ignore as much as by what you choose to confront. And if reacting to provocations already reveals neediness, the next mistake is even more blatant, displaying this lack of status with exaggerated presence and excessive posts. Showing a lack of status with excessive presence and posts, there's a fine line between being present and begging for attention. When someone overexposes themselves, whether by showing up everywhere or posting every minute on social media, they don't project power. They project neediness. Reality-driven politics shows that excessive presence doesn't build respect, it builds saturation. Machiavelli would say it's better to be feared than loved at this point, because respect is born from scarcity, not from exaggerated abundance. The end justifies the means, and here the means is the discipline of being selective, choosing where to be, when to show up, what to post. The appearance of virtue can be sustained by a measured, elegant presence, without the desire for validation. Loyal armies form around leaders who know how to value silence as much as words, and it is in this balance that magnetism is created rather than repulsive with insistence. Consider the case of great digital strategists. Those who post non-stop end up diluting their own message. The audience smells desperation as if crying out, "Look at me." Those who apply virtù and fortuna know that constancy is not the same as excess. A practical example. Compare an influencer who posts 20 stories a day without a filter with another who posts 3, but all well thought out, with cutting phrases and striking images. Who do you think generates more respect? Decisions based on real human nature prove that less is more when the goal is to maintain attention. The calculated use of force here is curation, cutting out the unnecessary and delivering only what generates impact. Want a simple exercise? Cut your content production in half for a week and observe. Scarcity creates value, and absence can be as powerful as presence. Displaying a lack of status also means falling into the trap of confusing visibility with power. But those who are everywhere, all the time, lose the mystery that sustains authority. Avoiding being hated isn't the same as always being available. On the contrary, it's knowing how to strategically withdraw so that your presence is felt in your absence. Constant adaptability means calibrating the frequency and intensity of your exposure. A practical practice is to alternate cycles of silence and speech, one week more discreet, the next with strategic interventions. This creates expectation and magnetism. Loyal armies don't follow those who demand attention, but those who become silent references. And if a lack of status already destroys the perception of authority, revealing your strategies in public, the next mistake, is almost like handing over your weapons to your enemies, inviting silent saboteurs to act against you. Open strategies in public and attract silent saboteurs. Revealing too much about your plans is like leaving the castle with the doors wide open. In reality-driven politics, those who expose their strategies in public invite invisible enemies to prepare. Machiavelli already warned that the end justifies the means, and in this case, the means is secrecy. Better to be feared than loved applies not only to political power, but also to how you guard your intentions. Those who expose everything they're going to do give others the power to anticipate, block, and even sabotage their steps. The calculated use of force begins with strategic silence. The appearance of virtue here isn't appearing transparent all the time, but rather revealing only what's necessary at the right time. Loyal, self-respecting armies thrive not on overly open speeches, but on mutual trust and protected loyalty. Consider the example of budding entrepreneurs who, eager to demonstrate innovation, reveal every detail of their idea in public. By doing so, they arouse both envy and opportunism. Virtue and fortune favor those who know how to protect what is fragile until it is strong enough to stand on its own. Decisions based on true human nature show that not everyone around you is an ally, even if they smile. A practical exercise? Before sharing a strategy, ask yourself, does this person have something to lose from me or only to gain? If the answer is only to gain, silence is the best choice. Constant adaptability here is filtering who truly belongs in the circle of trust. Excessive disclosure of strategies doesn't sound like power. It sounds like naivete. Those who speak openly about plans often seek validation, but end up receiving sabotage. Disclosing strategies in public not only attracts saboteurs, it creates expectations that can backfire. If you fail, you become a target of ridicule. If you succeed, you become a target of envy. Avoiding hatred isn't about pleasing everyone, but about not giving ammunition to those who oppose you. Loyal armies are built with those who protect information, not those who throw it to the wind. A powerful exercise is to practice the rule of less is more. Share results, not intentions. Showing your accomplishments builds authority. Showing your plan creates vulnerability. And if disclosing strategies in public already invites saboteurs, saying no as an excuse instead of a firm limit is the next mistake that opens the door for others to test your boundaries until they destroy your credibility. Saying no as an excuse, not a limit. No is one of the most powerful words there is, but many turn it into an apology, diluting its power. In reality-driven politics, saying no as if begging for forgiveness doesn't establish boundaries. It merely reveals insecurity. Machiavelli knew that firm limits are more respected than hesitant concessions. The end justifies the means when the priority is to preserve authority, and that includes clearly refusing. Better to be feared than loved applies here. A direct no may cause immediate discomfort, but it generates respect in the long run. The calculated use of force lies in the firmness with which one refuses something. When someone disguises a no with exaggerated justifications, they convey that they are open to negotiation, even when they are not. And the appearance of virtue is lost, because the limit sounds like hesitation, not conviction. Imagine a professional who receives an absurd last-minute request and responds, "I'd like to, but I can't, because I already have other tasks, and maybe if I organize myself." This type of response isn't a no, it's an invitation to insist. Virtù and fortuna favor those who understand that a limit should be short, direct, and blameless. Decisions based on real human nature show that people constantly test boundaries. Those who don't know how to say no clearly end up overwhelmed, used, and worse, disrespected. A practical exercise. Practice saying no bluntly. It's not possible. I won't do that. It's not within the agreement. No long justifications. If you want to soften the blow, use empathy, but don't leave room for backdoor negotiations. Loyal armies form around those who know how to protect themselves firmly, not those who give in for fear of displeasing. Turning no into an excuse is, at its core, an attempt to avoid being hated. But this fear takes its toll. It undermines credibility and turns boundaries into fragile suggestions. Constant adaptability doesn't mean weakening your decisions, but rather learning to say them humanely and firmly. A powerful exercise is practicing the positive no, refusing without guilt, but offering clarity. Example, I can't right now, but I can evaluate tomorrow. Or I don't do that, but I recommend someone who does. This preserves authority without destroying relationships. The secret is to maintain conviction. The world respects those who know how to protect their time and energy. And if saying no with excuses weakens your position, the incongruity between body and voice, the next mistake, destroys your credibility even faster because it reveals that your speech doesn't match your presence. Body-voice incongruence that destroys credibility. The body speaks before the voice, and when the two are at odds, credibility evaporates. In reality-driven politics, it's not enough to have good arguments if the body contradicts every word. Machiavelli would remind us that the appearance of virtue is as important as the virtue itself, and when the body doesn't confirm the voice, the mask falls. Imagine someone saying, "I'm confident," but with hunched shoulders, lowered gaze, and a trembling tone. The end justifies the means, and in this case, the means is to align body and voice. Better to be feared than loved translates into a firm presence which inspires respect without needing to explain. The calculated use of force is also present in gestures, speaking little, moving less, holding the gaze. Loyal, dedicated armies follow leaders who demonstrate coherence between what they say and what they convey physically. When there's incongruity, no one trusts. A clear example occurs in job interviews. The candidate claims to have leadership skills, but their voice is low and their body slumps in the chair. The interviewer doesn't need to be an expert in body language to spot the deception. Virtue and fortune don't smile at those who speak something they don't embody. Decisions based on real human nature show that people trust what they see more than what they hear. A practical exercise is to practice in front of a mirror. Read sentences aloud while observing your posture. Then, record videos and see if your facial expression matches the firmness of your words. Constant adaptability means correcting these micro-flaws until congruence becomes natural. The secret isn't to appear perfect, but to appear whole. When body and voice work together, each word gains weight. When they don't, each word loses value. Body-voice incongruence not only destroys credibility, but also reveals internal insecurity. It's like a warning sign to social predators. There's weakness here. Avoiding being hated doesn't mean molding yourself to please, but rather avoiding making your communication sound false. Want an immediate exercise? Choose a simple phrase like, "I trust myself," and repeat it out loud, adjusting your posture until your body confirms your words. The internal sensation changes, and so does the external perception. Loyal armies are drawn to leaders who inspire truth, and truth begins with the alignment between expression and speech. But if incongruence is already dangerous, the next mistake is even more corrosive, competing for attention based on the volume of your voice rather than the value of what you deliver. Compete for attention with volume, not value. Raising one's voice to be noticed is a mistake as common as it is destructive. In reality-driven politics, those who shout too much don't earn respect. They earn silent rejection. Machiavelli would remind us that it is better to be feared than loved, but he would never confuse fear with noise. The end justifies the means, and in this case, the means is not volume, but the density of what is said. The appearance of virtue is sustained when authority is natural, not forced by shouting. Those who compete for attention through loudness show a lack of substance and a lack of confidence that silence can often be worth more. The calculated use of force here is to speak less, but speak firmly. Loyal, dedicated armies unite around leaders who communicate clearly, not those who must impose themselves through shouting. Consider the example of speakers. Some speak in a measured tone, but each sentence resonates because it's packed with meaning. Others leap onto the stage shouting, trying to captivate the audience through auditory shock. Which one do you respect more? Virtue and fortune smile upon those who understand that value always trumps volume. Decisions based on real human nature show that people remember less the intensity of the tone and more the strength of the content. A practical exercise is to record your speech and realize, are you speaking to convey or to be noticed? Practice lowering your tone and increasing clarity. Take strategic pauses, look into people's eyes, and let silence carry more weight than haste. It's uncomfortable at first, but it transforms your presence. Constant adaptability here means adjusting your communication to be noticed by weight, not by shouting. Competing for attention with volume is also a form of lack of status. It's the cry of those who don't trust their ideas alone to carry the weight. Avoiding being hated doesn't mean speaking louder, it means speaking better. The secret lies in becoming memorable through the impact of your content. Want an immediate exercise? Choose a key phrase for each situation and say it slowly, firmly, almost like a verdict. When your body and voice align to this degree, each word becomes indisputable. Loyal armies follow those who speak little but leave deep impressions. And now that we've covered all the mistakes that destroy public authority, it's time to open another portal. The introduction that will connect the audience with this knowledge, sparking curiosity and preparing the ground for absorbing every detail. Now that you know the 9 public mistakes that destroy your authority, the question is straightforward. How many of these are you still making without realizing it? Every micro-excuse, every nervous laugh, every over-explanation is like handing over a portion of your power to someone who doesn't deserve it. Politics guided by reality shows that the social game doesn't forgive naivety. And if Machiavelli were here, he'd say, those who don't learn to use the appearance of virtue and the calculated use of force become mere extras in their own destiny. But here's the challenge. Would you rather continue being manipulated by invisible details, or are you ready to take control of your presence? Better to be feared than loved, as long as you know how to avoid being hated. And that only happens when you master these principles in your daily life. Try observing your speech, cutting out excuses, maintaining strategic silence, and saying no firmly. Small adjustments completely change how others perceive you. And before you leave, answer this. Which of these mistakes do you find yourself making most often? Write in the comments, because interaction isn't just about venting, it's the first step toward real change. And if you want to continue learning how to transform your presence into power, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. This way, each new video will be another weapon for you to master the invisible game of human relationships.